Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. On behalf of the Board of Trustees of the Hispanic Society Museum and Library and all of the staff here at the museum, thank you for joining us, for your interest, and thank you for your time. Thank you for supporting these brilliant artist fellows here at the Hispanic Society. With generous support from the Vilcek Foundation, as well as from the New York State Council on the Arts, NYSCA, the Hispanic Society Artist Fellowship Program seeks to recognize and to renew a longstanding tradition here at the museum of supporting living artists. Tonight, we are joined by Associate Curator Orlando Hernandez Ying, who will introduce our artist fellow.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Karina, for being here. We are with Karina Aguilera Skvirsky, an artist fellow for this year with the Hispanic Society. Karina, welcome to the Hispanic Society, and tell us a little bit more about your trajectory and a little bit more about the work that you have done with us in this occasion.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much to the America Society Museum for inviting me to do a project or do a research project really with the collection. And I wanted to give you a little bit of history on that. So there was the exhibition that Margaret Haddock, right, did in I think it was 2021. I'm forgetting the name, but
Connors McQuaid.
Yeah, right. Madeline Haddock. Right.
Okay.
Excuse me. And that exhibition she did was this mix of artworks from the collection from Latin America as well as from Spain. And when I saw these 4 sculptures by Caspicara, I was blown away. And then I realized that these sculptures were, that Caspicara is actually an Ecuadorian sculptor from the Quito school. And so then I did a short presentation. I did a little bit of research about the sculptures, which everyone's going to see in a little while. And then I sort of became a little bit obsessed with them and wanted to do, when I was invited to then do a project that was funded by the New York State Council for the Arts, then I thought of developing that interest into a video art project. And that's what I ended up doing.
When we were having an informal conversation during the whole process, you told us that you also had some Ecuadorian background. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, of course. So my background is my mother is Ecuadorian from Guayaquil, and my father is American Jewish from Boston. But I grew up going back and forth to Ecuador my whole life, and a lot of my practice really focuses these days on a period of really kind of, it started with some memories of when I lived there as a child.
Okay.
And so since then I have developed more projects relating to my own identity, but also Ecuadorian history and Ecuadorian culture, right? In a kind of specific way that then opens up to kind of other questions around identity, national identity, as well as individual identity.
Immigration, perhaps, and things like that. What a coincidence that did you know that Caspicara was Ecuadorian when you laid your eyes on these objects and then found them so fascinating?
I didn't. I'm a contemporary artist, and so I have, as I like to say, a lot of holes in my art history. And also, I'm not. My father was Jewish, so I wasn't raised Catholic. So I didn't, have a connection to any of kind of the relics from Ecuador or even the church, right? So yeah, but when I found out about Caspicara, I immediately called my friend who's a curator in Ecuador and his name's Rodolfo Cronfle Chambers.
You
Yes,
have introduced
yes.
them.
And he sent me an article from Hyperallergic immediately. When he found out that the museum had acquired those sculptures, he came to New York
to see them.
specifically to see them.
Oh wow!
So he was like my Ecuadorian source, and really gave me some more background and told me places to look.
Tell us a little bit more about your trajectory as an artist. Usually, what media it comes on, and then what you have, how you have changed that or kept it, doing this piece, associating these objects and the work that you do.
So I really come to art through photography.
Okay.
And so really vernacular photography, like photo albums. That was sort of my first kind of introduction. And then at some point I realized I didn't even think photography was art. And then at some point I was like, oh, photography is art. And then I consider myself my work really is very much grounded in photography, but it has expanded and into video and performance and installation.
Excellent. Just to be on the same page with our audiences and people that are less familiar with the terms performance and video performance, would you like to explain a little bit more about those in the context of your work?
So when I talk about performance, I'm really talking about performance as in art performance rather than as in theater performance, right? So it really comes out of the history of art, really, from the 1960s. And when you perform live, right, you're performing in front of an audience, and you can't really control. You have certain parameters, but you can't control how the audience is going to interact, what's going to happen over time, right? Because it's like time-based. But when you perform in front of a video camera or even a still camera, you have the ability to then edit that and kind of control it in a different way. It's still a performance, but it has a kind of post-production that happens after the fact, where you can shape the piece to say different things.
Yeah. I would like also to add that for me, I've been asked recently, like, what was performance? A performance within the discourse of our history. And I said, well, it's any sort of like artistic manifestation where the artist actually uses his own body to make it a work of art, or make it a vehicle for the work of art. So whether it's immediate, like you said, a live performance in front of an audience, or mediated through video. Well, I think that the core of it is the participation of the artist on his own body in the work of art. So tell us a little bit more about the afterlife, and how do you adapt that concept and that methodology with the works of Caspicara?
Well, first, I just want to say that your understanding of performance is perfect. Yes, it is about the body, and that's where they overlap. So yes, the body is very much like the vehicle, right? It's the canvas. So in the afterlife, what I was thinking about, so the artworks that I really focused on are called the Four Fates of Man. Death, purgatory, hell, and heaven, right? So these different phases and different things that might happen in terms of Catholic religion, and what happens after you die, right? So what I was really interested in when I saw the sculptures is they're about this high, right? But they are so detailed, and the gestures in them are really kind of incredible. They're just the torso. So you don't see the legs, you just see the hands, and you see these gestures and the facial expressions. So that's what really became very kind of interesting to me. And I've done some past work, past performances in which I imitate gesture, right? So I did a project called The Poems My Mother Recited, and she was a fantastic reciter of poetry. She didn't write the poetry. And so she would, there were these press photos of her in Ecuador in the 1950s. And so as a live performance, I imitated the press photos and then performed the poems exactly the way she taught them to me when I was a child, right? So this idea of gesture, which is also really connected to photography, gesture is so important. I also teach photography, and in a portrait, the gesture is sometimes just as important as, you know, the face. So my immediate idea was like, I'm going to reenact these sculptures and I'm going to reenact the gestures. And that's sort of like the visual part, the part that sort of stays in my head. But then I'm like, what is that about?
Right.
And so part of the interest in the whole story of the sculptures is like, how did they get from Ecuador to New York, right? Like, and it goes back to that question of immigration, provenance, and like, there's the metaphor of immigration. And so I thought that I could juxtapose this kind of reenactment, which is very bodily, with more kind of cerebral interviews with important players that know a lot about Caspicara and that know a lot about the Quito school, that know a lot about those sculptures.
All right. So going back to that point that we have been discussing all along as well, well, there's not 100% certainty that they are by Caspicara. We assume that, you know, the curators that are in charge of these pieces, in fact, you know, we think that is very close to Caspicara, given his level of mastery in the art of sculpture, and also the level of the high level of sophistication that the sculptures have, that we have seen, that you have already described. At the same time, we have no names, no you know, no documents. And also, we have to understand that in the context of the Quito School and works of art that are done for the church in wood, and in this case, polychrome wood, it's basically the work of many artists: the carver, the painter, the gilder, and so on. So, you know, when we talk about the Caspicara, we're talking more about like the idea of a man that we know that certain works of art have been ascribed to him that are, you know, that are documented, like the ones in the Cathedral of Quito, but at the same time, there are others that form this kind of like world around Caspicara, but we don't have certainly, you know, the hard documents to really make a connection there. But by style and by the level of sophistication of the works, we can definitely associate them. So now that we know that, and we know that more or less the Quito school, I think we're talking about the 18th century.
Yes.
And now let's talk about the interpretation that we have of these works. How much time did you spend getting everything together in terms of props, makeup, you know, and all that to create the images that you're going to share with us later?
Right. So, yeah, I think, are the images on the screen now? Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, no, let's look at the images. So I did want to just respond a little bit to the whether it's Caspicara or not. I think that's a really fascinating question. And so I'm interested in kind of that ambiguity and just asking about it, and really like learning more through the interviews about how this kind of sculpture functioned in the 18th century, right? So yeah, in terms of the video, I had a nice budget, but a smallish budget. So I acted as my own producer, and really, it was an incredible experience because I was able to find a fantastic camera person and makeup person. And am I allowed to name check them?
Absolutely.
Okay, so the makeup person, Caroline Mills, and the cameraman is Giacomo Benetti. And so they made this happen, right? Because of their incredible skill set. So I would love to just share a little bit, and part of in my practice, like I'm really interested in showing the labor and the behind the scenes. So I have a little bit of that. So we filmed some of the labor, we filmed reenactment, and then we filmed the imitation of some of the gestures, both of the sculptures, and I'm just going to show the part where I imitate some of the paintings in the North Gallery.
Yes.
So I have to say, this image is the one that kind of sparked the project.
Perhaps the most powerful of them all, yes.
Yeah, and I guess like when I looked at this, I was like first of all, it's like this is representing hell.
Right.
And it's very devilish. And so I just kind of became enamored with this. And also I sort of identified with it, like the crazy hair and, the kind of crazy emotion. And I just really connected to this character. Of course, it's Hal. So, I don't know what that says about me, but that sort of sparked it. So I thought this is
also, before you pass it on,
yeah.
we talk a little bit about that particular image. I think it is like I think that Caspicara gives us a thermometer where you have like 4 markings in that of the degrees of heat in that thermometer, and this is probably the hottest one, right?
Yes.
And then being the figure in heaven, the lightest one. But you also mentioned that this particular image called your attention because it had like a racialized identity. Would you like to expand a little bit more about that?
Thank you for bringing that up. Yes, I thought that if you start looking and comparing them to the others, right? The skin is the darkest in hell, and we see that, right? We see images, racialized images historically, especially in religious iconography of like the kind of the bad characters are darker, they have kinky hair. So I really thought that would be an interesting thing to think about as a kind of subtext in looking at these 4 sculptures. And so this is the one where I was like, I think there's something to that. And I'll just tell this to the audience, through my discussions with Orlando, he showed me these engravings, which were probably the sources that the sculptor used to create the sculptures, and they're even more racialized, which is kind of interesting.
Let me share it with the audience right here. This is a collaboration from the conservation department. So we have the 4 of them by Pandieren. And this is part of the panel that they used to expose them with in the Museo del Prado. So we're very happy that we kept it. And thanks to Ellen Fontoira for loading the engravings to us. But yes, definitely this is the graphic source that inspired this artist in Ecuador to make these 4 wonderful sculptures about the 4 fates of humans after life, in the afterlife, which is the title of our presentation tonight. So you can see the soul in heaven, con las bienaventuranzas, the one in purgatory that is suffering for some time before it ascends to heaven, and then the one from hell, and the skeleton that represents death, which is the first of the stages of this afterlife. And then from there, it goes through either of the 3 alternatives that we have according to the Christian the Christian dogma. So that is another contribution that we have here graphically to also, add on to what we're going to see with your work.
Yes, no, that was, it sort of confirmed what I could see, right? Just based on the sculptures.
So what are we looking at next?
So next we are looking at, that's heaven. And so you can really see the difference, like how porcelain the skin is looking, and that was really emphasized in the video. And then this is a behind the scenes look at putting on the makeup for death, and you can see it's a bald cap, and then the face is being put on my face. And
let me just also add to that as I told you before, I had never seen an artist like firsthand, like so committed, not only to the project that he had envisioned, but also to the quality level that really gets to the point of sophistication, where you see like that real Caspicara like in front of you with all the props, the makeup, the spirit gum, the color, everything, the contact lenses. It was really something worth watching. How the behind the scenes production that you put together for this.
Thanks, Orlando. It's prosthetics, right? So, and I'd never done anything like that.
Through them during the whole day, I was like, oh my God, this woman is really committed to her art, and also to see the people that work with you behind the scenes to put the makeup together, the cameraman, and the other assistants were really also on point, helping you out with all of this.
And so here's the finished makeup, and there I was striking the pose, or approximating the pose for the camera, but also practicing for the video. And then here's this is the getting ready for heaven.
Mm-hmm. Also, we would like to disclose that and then make a disclaimer that there's some nudity involved in the videos that you're going to show. So we want to have the audience prepared for that. And please, if there are children or something, be mindful that this is coming up.
And there is heaven. And so again, I think what was so remarkable about the makeup artist is the ability to totally transform. Absolutely. Right?
I kind of think that one's from heaven, and that is definitely it's got to be by surprise.
Right?
Yes, it looks like a different person.
Very different person. And there's no prosthetics, it's just makeup.
We'll talk about later why did you choose hell as the one that really caught you instead of heaven, but we can do that behind the camera.
Exactly.
All right. Oh, look at this. This is
the behind the scenes of hell, and you can see the painting the teeth black to give that a little extra. And then here's the finished hell.
Wow, that's amazing. And the prop that for the neck piece with the chains. Where did you get that done? That's amazing. You look exactly like the object.
Somebody that makes props for people into S&M.
You're definitely working on a edge, Karina.
He was so amazing because I sent him the photo, and so he ended up doing it exactly like what.
I wouldn't be surprised it's gonna be like a bestseller for next season. And well, now that we have seen most of the image, and tell us a little bit more about the more or less the projected objectives that you have for this video performance, and how you think it's gonna work.
That is a great question. So I spoke with my editor, and we are going to start, and I'll drop that name too, Michael Lance, great editor. And we're going to start editing in February. Okay. So there's a lot of behind the scenes things that have to happen, and I still have to do the interviews. So I haven't done that,
All
but
right.
that's next on the list. So the way that I'm thinking about it is there are a few parts, right? There's the actual sculptures that we were able to film. There's the reenactment of them. And then there is the behind the scenes, the putting on the makeup, and then there are the interviews that where I am really thinking about asking and tracking the provenance, figuring out, like, basically going back to that question, how did the sculptures get to New York? And a lot of really it's there's some unknown, right? Those ambiguities.
Yes, absolutely.
And also, why or why not is it Caspicara? And what does that mean?
Correct.
Right.
Mhm.
Those are the few things that I'm really interested in talking about. One of the other things is I'm going to Ecuador
Oh,
in January to do an interview. And so what's interesting there is that the sculptures were probably part of a different, like
Setup,
a
yeah.
set,
Absolutely.
an altar or something.
The scale also tells us that it was probably like a domestic altar rather than like church one that would be bigger. So those are little, details that can be pulled out from the sculptures themselves. But then there's so many other
Yes.
things that are unexplainable at this
Yes,
point.
but that I'm really interested in that, like how that happened and like how it goes from this kind of a community-based kind of artwork to a more kind of personalized artwork that, an artifact. And then in some ways, like it comes back to the community through the museum, which I think is interesting.
And then revive it, we revive it again with a performance
Yes.
like this one. So it all keeps on evolving. And I think that is a beautiful metaphor also, because I think that art is one of those aspects of human nature that just unfolds in multiple directions and it keeps expanding. And I think that now you're part of that discourse and kind of like carrying on the legacy of
Yeah.
Caspicara into the 21st century. What else can we, share with the public tonight with what you have done with reinterpreting our works?
Yeah, so I want to show this this video of me in the hell costume reenacting one of the paintings, or sorry, I should say mimicking the gesture in one of the paintings in the North Gallery. So we'll watch a little video. So like I said, we just shot this last week. So this is just really like a little taster.
Correct. Bumper.
And there's no sound, so if they get confused, there's
Yes,
Yes,
hearing.
yes, there's no sound, which is going to be interesting to design that sound, which I'm really looking forward to.
Another level of stimulus that you put into there, of the visuals, the preparation, all that, and then the sound is definitely going to be another layer of that now becomes part of the work of art.
Definitely.
Take a look at it.
Okay. So Hal is looking at this painting of Goya by
you caught me there because I
Oh,
remember, but
sorry.
at the top of my head.
Sorry, I forget names during these interviews. That my names go out of my head, and I apologize.
We'll get it for the audience later on.
Yeah. But that I think it's like so. It's an amazing painting, and if you look at it, you've got the two hands and the leg and the sort of slouching, and there's actually, it's hard to see, but there's somebody behind Goya, and there's like a little mouse tail there. I mean, and the camera's really kind of just circling me and looking at the painting, right? And then it eventually, so there's a little bit of a mystery there because it's just the back of hell.
Oh, so we cannot see your face right during this in this clip.
Or not yet.
All right. Oh,
And there it is. And I'm basically mimicking the gesture of the sculpture.
All right. So that was pretty amazing. I think the objects, I think, different from other works of art of the same time period and location. When you have a sculpture of a saint, it's sort of like a portrait of your mom or a portrait of someone that you know, and that object becomes the vessel for the identity of that person, whether it's a holy or a person from or terrestrial or mortal. But these particular images are different because they do not represent any human being or any saint in particular or any one in particular, but the idea of the human soul in these three stages: heaven, the purgatory, which is a place where you expiate, where you pay for your sins, and then you got sent to heaven, and then hell, which is the absence of God, basically, and it's all about despair and loss of hope. So I think that when you represent these images, wow, that's an amazing one too. I think that you put whatever is in front of you, in front of the idea of mortality and in front of the idea of how you lived your life. And I think that's what I get when when you reenact the poses of the works that were that are on display in the North Gallery. When you see all this beauty of this nice women from the modern period wearing these nice gowns, and then you wearing a skeleton costume are in front of them, you put us in front of our mirrors, to look at ourselves in the mirror and see that our life in front of the mirror of mortality and what have we done with it. And I think that is carried out very beautifully with your performance. Can you tell us a little bit more about your own perspective?
No, that was one of the other layers, right? I mean, there's this incredible costuming that happens, right? But then now that I'm in character, what do I do, right? So having access to be able to film in the museum was such a gift. And so those paintings are so incredible. So of course, I was thinking the exact same thing that you just said, that each character really kind of hones in on one painting and becomes that painting, or is that painting, or is the afterlife of that painting of the character.
It creates that dialogue, definitely. And I found that beautiful, that with every work, it created a different type of dialogue. Like the beautiful woman then faced with death, like all that beauty is going to go away, and it's going to become that skeleton, like the life of Goya and all the dark figures that are floating, behind him in that portrait. And then he's presented with the image of hell and all those dialogues that come out of that. And I think that interpretation and reinterpretation, and then opening up for the interpretation of the viewer, I think it's a great way to really carry on the legacy of all this art.
Yeah, no, that's so beautifully put. And that is really the things that I was thinking about. And I think it goes to this process of art making, right? That, I was obsessed with the sculptures. I was really thinking about the reenactment of those sculptures. But then once I'm in a context, then it's like, wow, that's interesting. How do I layer that into what I'm trying to do? And it adds this whole other layer of that's like an intermediary, in a way, state, right?
Yes.
Before it's frozen like the sculptures. So I really, I'm really excited about that part, and I hadn't really talked about it, so I appreciate.
No, excellent. Should we open it up to questions and wrap it up with some final ideas around the?
Yeah, and we can show this very last video in which I am reenacting the gesture in the painting, I believe, of Huntington.
Oh, yes.
our founder.
That's correct. He'll be thrilled.
And so this is Purgatory back in the North Gallery. There's Goya again. This is very unedited, so that's why it's taking a minute, and I apologize for that.
No, it's it's fresh off the of the oven, so we're looking at something really special.
There, I just like backed up all the files. All right, there.
There's just Arthur Huntington.
Yep.
And then I think the North Gallery building, I mean, the gallery there is also like the perfect setting to against the perfect backdrop for the representation of the images.
Yeah.
All right,
great.
so let's look at some of the questions and see if we can address them.
Sure. Can you tell us more about the application of the makeup, of the costumes, and did you have a favorite of the 4 figures?
So we shot in 2 days, and the death, because of the prosthetics that took, and it was our first day, so we were setting everything up. It really took it was like a 3-hour process to get that right. And so we shot just that one on the first day, and then the other 3 on the second day. And do I have a favorite? I'm
That would be mine. The
Yeah.
hell would be mine.
How would be your? I mean, it is the reason I did the
The
piece.
skeleton one was
Yeah.
really powerful as
Yeah.
well. But then I think that the expressiveness of the hell one really, it wasn't only the props, the makeup, but also the expression that you control more, because with the skeleton it was a little bit more about the mask.
Yes.
In the hell representation was more about also it led more room for you to do, to carry on that
Yes.
emotion. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I kind of agree with you on that. It was so expressive, but each one was such a different kind of war. Like, I really did feel so. It's interesting to think of how the makeup transformed me, and then I felt. And in a way, like, again, like when I teach performance as a professor, I always say, like, performance isn't about acting, right? It's not. And so I felt like the makeup made it easy for me to just perform without acting.
Okay.
Yeah, it did that work for me.
Excellent. Next question.
Yeah, a second question would be, after completing the project, would you consider doing the process again, but perhaps with some other kind of object from the collection?
Oh my God, yes. Yes.
And what might that be, if you had any?
I mean, I think so. I think that's what's like. This is the first time I've ever done anything like this, right? I mean, except for the So I mean, I think I'd just be interested in it. I really believe, like, in not to have preconceived notions when you do research, right? But to find the thing that kind of moves you and then work from there. So I think that would be my process. But if I had the opportunity
Absolutely.
to do something else, I would use that same process, which is like kind of following your intuition. And then when the thing grabs you, then you develop that and you make the project.
Excellent.
And lastly, has the extended interaction with the collection changed perhaps how you thought about our institution, the Hispanic Society, like before and after? How do you think about the museum? Is a question.
Well, I didn't know that much about the museum, and now I know about the people that work here. I know about the incredible collection and the incredible building. So I'm grateful. I'm floored by the magnificent
Thank you.
collection that you guys have. And I'm like excited to be part of this group that is kind of activating the space in different ways and bringing in new audiences. Like I hope I can help with that. And I think I think there's so much to learn here, and there's so much beauty to see, and there's so much to think about.
Thank you. I would like to just say thanks to you for being part of that dialogue and this tremendous innovative experience of exchange between the institution and then living artists. Also, I would like to point out that you and your crew were in the best behavior and very respectful about all the regulations that we have to be able to use the spaces, and we appreciate that. And that you used our collection to reinterpret and then bring new discourses to these works of art that are still talking to us. And I think that it's an amazing opportunity also to give thanks to all our donors and supporters for this kind of projects, because that keeps us relevant and also connected to our community. So thank you very much for this great experience. Thank you for being here. And sharing this experience that you are with us. And thanks to everyone at home watching. And please keep in touch with the Hispanic Society and our activities. Thank you, Karina.
Thank you, Orlando. It was amazing. And thank you, everybody, for putting this together. Thank you, Ryan, for doing all the tech, and
Natalie in education, our folks at conservation, and also administration, people at the director's office. Thank you very much, and we'll see you in the next time. Thank you.
Oh my God.